the motion. Do we have a second? Those opposed? Motion carries. We'll add number 3 to field trip discussion, and number 4 is now adjourned. Do we have any other requests to modify the agenda? With that being said, the first item on the agenda is the review of the Silver Creek Community Schools return to school plan. Basically, this modification, everybody should have a copy plus received an email. We have extras if anybody in the crowd wants. I know it was emailed out to all stakeholders, but if you don't have one, I think we have a couple left. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So I know most people probably had the opportunity to read it, but Dr. Briggs, if you wanted to just kind of go over the changes that we've made and that we'll be voting on tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Good evening, everyone. The proposed addendum, first of all, has 2 parts. 1, contact tracing, 2, mask and e-learning. The contact tracing, we do not have an option as to the protocol for that, as that is sent to us from the State Health and Clark County Health Department. And mask and e-learning, my goal in this addendum is to provide the board with a plan in case our positivity rate or our quarantine or isolation rate gets to a certain degree where it's impacting first the health of our students and employees, and 2, the status of us being able to keep adults in the classroom. So I propose a 3-tier system that is based on a 7-day positivity rate. The 7-day positivity rate will be calculated with only Silver Creek School Corporation humans, for lack of a better word, students and employees. Every day produces a new 7-day positivity rate. Tier 1, there are 3 tiers to this. Tier 1 is what we're currently in, and that is where masks are highly recommended. If the positivity rate at any school, and we will take this positivity rate per school, reaches 2% or higher, then we will shift into Tier 2 for a minimum of 7 days, 7 calendar days, and that is mask mandatory for all students and staff. If the positivity rate climbs to 6% or more, we will shift into Tier 3 for a minimum of 7 calendar days, and that is e-learning. During those 7 days, around day 6, day 7, we will recalculate the 7-day positivity rate on that present day and determine, do we remain in Tier 2 or Tier 3? Do we advance to Tier 3 if in Tier 2, or do we go back to a lesser level, or in Tier 3 back to Tier 2, Tier 2 back to Tier 1? The idea being that if we go away from the mask recommended to required for e-learning, that we're only there for a short time until the data says that we can shift out of that. There are 2 ways that we get to e-learning, and unfortunately we're experiencing one of them today. The first way is if we get to 6% positivity rate in one building. The second way is if we simply do not have the adult personnel to run a school. And we've run into that now. And we can debate mask or not, we can debate vaccines or not, but there is no debate on the contact tracing. And if you have a mask on, it's 3 feet. If you don't have a mask on, it's 6 feet. So to date, we have hundreds of humans, employees and students, who are sitting at home who are asymptomatic. And what that's led to is us not having enough educators to educate our children. So we can't sit here and continue to hope for the best. We've got to shift. We're now 3 of our schools, the primary, the elementary, and the middle school, starting Monday, are 5 school days of e-learning. We will reevaluate, not our positivity rate, we will reevaluate per school next week to say, okay, Principal A, Principal B, Principal C, what are you going to have the following week? Are you ready to open our schools again and bring our kids back into the classrooms? We anticipate that answer to be yes, but we will not know that until we get to that time. So tonight, I would ask the board to approve the addendum, giving us 3 tiers. We're currently in Tier 1. I will say that if approved tonight and we were not going to e-learning on Monday, Silver Creek Elementary School would be at 2.06%. They would have masks on Monday for a minimum of 7 calendar days. No other school is close to that at present. Right now, Silver Creek Primary School has a 0.51% positivity rate. Silver Creek Elementary, a 2.09% positivity rate. Silver Creek Middle School, 1.29% positivity rate. And Silver Creek High School, 0.58% positivity rate. And the last thing I'll share is on our website, we have a dashboard. Shows you the cumulative positive cases. We will maintain that dashboard, but we will add to it. We're going to add to it as we start Monday, our weekly positivity rates with students and adults, as well as keeping the grand total. And then we'll also add any given day, you'll be able to see the running 7-day positivity rate for each building, so that you're not getting a call from your principal or from me in the 11th hour saying, hey, we're going to e-learning because it's 6%, or we're going to mass for 2%, and you're like, wait a minute, we were at 0.05 3 days ago. You can monitor that daily if you choose. Thank you.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation. Do we have a motion to bring this to the floor for discussion and voting?
I saw that.
Ms. Rosenberg makes the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Bassey seconds. Do we have any discussion?
Yes, I have something I'd like to say, and it might take me just a moment, so please be patient with me. I typed this out because I'm very emotional about us having to close 3 of our schools today. But I believe that this plan doesn't maximize the number of students who will be able to stay in our buildings and stay well. When 2 students are masked, we are only required to quarantine those who were less than 3 feet from the positive student. As our parent, Ms. Dement, stated, the R0 is 7 for this variant, meaning 1 positive person will likely infect up to 7 people. This variant is more aggressive and is infecting children at a greater rate than the original variant. I expressed my concerns to all of you early on when numbers were low, that if we didn't require masks, that we would be in a predicament to close our buildings. And what I predicted has now happened. We have closed 3 of our 4 buildings. We have been reckless by not requiring masks and have caused undue stress on our students, staff, and parents. This plan is going to overwork our nurses and administrators. We approved the hiring of a health assistant at the last board meeting, and now we're approving another health employee just to manage this convoluted plan. A plan that goes against the recommendations of our public health department, the AAP, the CDC, and epidemiologists. Our neighboring district, which has masked since day 1, has 8 positive cases. We, on the other hand, have 71 or more. I believe we as a board have failed our community, so I hope you can see now that we need to require masks without a tiered system before this gets even worse.
Anybody else have any discussion?
Yeah, I just think, I'm along with Rachel from the start. I think this should be in mask. I don't think we would be sitting here this afternoon if it was been wearing masks. I know it's a topic that there's no right or wrong to it. There's 2 sides of it. That science says mask does help stop the spread.
I'd like to make a discussion on that as well. If we look at what, again, we have in here, we have probably 7 or 8 people that have masks. Everybody else does not have masks.
Sorry, we can't hear you, sir. Can you speak up?
Sorry about that. So, again, I bring up that the majority of people here in this room not wearing masks. The minority might have the mask. Quarantine doesn't work. I will give you a little insight to that. My daughter was quarantined over a week ago. A couple days later, she showed signs. A couple days after that, we go get her tested, and she tested positive. How many people does he infect? 0. Why? Because we follow the guidelines we set forth here. We followed the guidelines we had at the house by not having, we had her self-quarantined. My son was quarantined because he was in 3 foot wearing a mask. My daughter was 6 feet not wearing a mask. My son tested negative. I have the mask side and I have the non-mask side. It works. I want us to do what's best for SCSC. I want us to follow our guidelines. If you follow online, 47172 zip code has the highest vaccination rate in the county.
Number 12, can't get vaccinated.
Any other discussion?
I will stand behind that. The recommendation right now is that they're highly recommended. I believe that every parent knows their child best and needs to make those decisions for their child.
As a school board and a school district, we are in charge of providing the service delivery of education to kids in public institutions. That is very hard to do with what's going on outside of the doors of these schools. But at the end of the day, we can only regulate so much. We're not in charge of regulating masks, mandates, what the Department of State Health decides are quarantine measures. Those are not things that we can control. The overwhelming majority of parents are sending their child to school without masks. That tells me that they feel that their risk is low, or that they are considering their own family dynamic and each individual family member's care in their own decision making. The quarantine process is extremely frustrating. We have looked at this from every single angle as far as what the quarantine options are. Until that changes elsewhere, we have to implement it here. Therefore, we are stuck in a very difficult position. We feel, or I feel, I want to speak for myself, I feel that has to be parental choice at this point when you're sending your child to school. You know the risks, you know the outcomes of what could potentially happen if they are exposed, if they are quarantined, what they miss out on. And I feel like the parents understand that. I feel like we have a pretty educated population of parents in our community who feel like they can make the decisions that are best for their students. We may likely never see another mandated mask mandate, even in this county. Even if we go to red, we may never see that. So it is always going to be probably maybe a choice, and that is a choice that I think each individual has.
I don't want to be left out, so I guess I'm not 100% on board with this plan, and here's the reason why. It's because it is a good plan for what we can do now. The plan that we came up with over a week ago, that was shot down by local health officials, was to eliminate quarantine. I understand, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, I understand COVID's real. I understand that it does affect kids as well as adults. I know studies show that there's a difference in how it affects. But here's what we don't know. We don't know what the long-term effect of COVID is on the mental health of our children. When you are quarantining 40 kids for 2 weeks because they happen to sit within 6 feet of someone, that's a disservice to them. It's a disservice to the kid who I talked to, whose parents I talked to last week, was quarantined. He's a freshman in high school. He was upset and depressed that he was quarantined. He didn't even understand his math class that he was in. And he said, "Mom, how am I going to learn e-learning when I don't even understand it in school?" And his ultimate response was, "I guess I'll just fail the first time." That's a disservice to that child, the start of his high school career. We also don't know about the depression or long-term effects that this has on our kids that can't. 60% of our middle school and high school students participate in ECAs. When you take those kids out of ECAs show that people who participate in ECAs are more likely to graduate high school
when you pull them from that, you're also creating an emotional anxiety type. What about the students who are fearful for looking at their principal in the eye because they think if they make eye contact, they're getting ready to be cornered? That's a disservice to our kids. So while I'm not fully on board with this plan, because it doesn't take into account the elimination of quarantine, I do believe it's the best plan that we can come
I want to follow up too with just a couple things. I mean, this is not a decision that we've taken lightly. I mean, we have talked with our building administrators hours. And just some of the concerns with wearing the masks at a younger age, so much of, hearing and seeing and facial expressions and the things that social cues that the kids pick up on, the masks affect that. And we could argue all day whether we think wearing a mask prevents the spread or if it doesn't. And we could come up here with our own statistics about what we think helps or hurts. But at the end of the day, nobody on this panel is a medical expert. Nobody. And we have to ask ourselves, what is our guidance? And what do we see in our community? And how do we move forward and try to put all that together?
Yeah, I would agree.
Can I finish on that, please?
Sure. I thought you were finished.
So, with that being said, I want you to know that we have spoken at length to our building administrators and asked them, what are your students doing? How are the parents sending their kids in masks? You could get online and read whatever you want, and it might look 50-50, but when they're coming to our building, it's 80 to 90% of the children and the staff are not in masks, and the other 10% possibly are. And I support anybody's individual choice on what they feel is in their best interest. The people that are wearing the masks and choosing that for themselves, I think that's great for them. We have to find common ground and support each other and respect each other's decisions moving forward.
So I would agree that we are not helping experts, and neither is our administration. But I would say that our health department, AAP, and our epidemiologists are, and they recommend that we're wearing masks. If our students were wearing masks at this time, we would not be shutting down our three buildings.
You're comparing us to a neighbor.
I'm sorry. It's my turn to speak. What I'm saying is, if our students had been in masks, we would not be shutting down our school.
That's incorrect.
And
That's a false statement.
because of our quarantine guidelines that we would have to go by, and because of the spread, I think it is more important for our students to be in the building. As a teacher, I know the importance of them being taught in school. I know the emotional toll it takes for them to be at home on e-learning, and that the quality of education is not the same. I feel like we should do whatever we can to maximize the number of students that we have in our buildings and to keep our buildings open. And in order to do that, it means everyone has to wear a mask. I'm going to reiterate, if both people are wearing a mask and one of them is positive, there is no quarantine that has to happen if they have been 3 or more feet away from each other.
Real science doesn't support your mask mandate.
Guys, please, let the board have discussion and let us communicate. We all respect each other up here. We may have different opinions, and that's fine, but Rachel is a person that I respect. Her opinion may be different from mine, but we can have that open discussion. My only concern with where you come from, Rachel, is that you don't take into consideration the effect that wearing a mask has on our students as well. You're taking it from a physical health standpoint. In my opinion, there's mental health, possibly psychological challenges that come with some of our kids wearing masks, and I don't think that from your perspective out here, you take that into consideration. Or maybe you weigh it heavier than the physical health risk. And we just have difference of opinion. I feel like our plan tries to meet in the middle, give us an opportunity to facilitate education without wearing the mask. So we reach a point that we feel that we need to try to look at our numbers and move forward.
So when I was in the classroom with students wearing masks, I found that it was the parents that had more of an issue with it than the students. The students put it on and they went about their day. I'm not saying it doesn't take a toll on students and the teacher, it most certainly does, but the greater emotional toll is sending them home and closing the school buildings.
That's something that doesn't need to be done anyways.
I don't believe we voted in public input, is that correct?
We have not.
Again, I'll just reiterate, we are not health experts. This is not a political thing. None of us were elected by being a Republican, a Democrat, or independent. If you have a look across the entire country, not everyone can agree as well. We are trying to do what's best for SCSC.
And let's reiterate and be really clear. The reason we are e-learning today is not because we are at a higher rate of positivity that we feel is a concern that we would shut our buildings down. We are at e-learning because so many of our students are quarantined and staff members who also are parents in the community. The toll that this has taken on our staff, balancing, being a parent, going home, flip-flopping with the spouse to make sure their children are taken care of. It's a huge burden. We can't fix the quarantine measures. When those change, the e-learning will greatly improve. Probably would even be a consideration. And the other thing I want to mention is that when we have these discussions and we're asking for data, we're constantly asking questions. 4 years ago, pre-COVID, on a normal school day, we would look at those numbers and we would have more kids out then due to other illnesses than what we have out daily in our buildings now. And we never had a concern with those numbers. I asked for those numbers, a comparable rate of what those numbers would be, pre-COVID, non-pandemic. What did the building absences look like on such day? And those numbers were comparable, if not higher, possibly due to other illnesses. If we collected data on flu or strep throat, and those kids were out for that, what would that look like? Collecting data on COVID because we're tracing. Therefore, it leads us to this data that we have to kind of guide us to ensure health and safety and see where we're at. So though, you're talking about illnesses that were that are 2-3 days, maybe 4 or 5. That did not necessarily have significant side effects. This is a pandemic. It's not. You could be sick for 2 weeks. You could have long-lasting side effects. You can infect those around you who are more susceptible to passing away from it. It's a different type of illness. If you look back in history, there have been other pandemics. This is nothing new. They don't go away overnight. They typically last anywhere from 3 to 5 years. We've only been through about a year and a half of it. Thankfully, we have vaccines now, so maybe our pandemic time frame won't last 3 to 5 years. But to compare it to other illnesses, I would say you're not comparing data correctly.
All right, after hearing discussion, Ms. Overberg made a motion. Mr. Basham second. All those in favor for the school plan
that Dr. Briggs submitted, please state by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries 4-1.
Next on the agenda is the approval of a health team communicator. This came to the effect as we realized that what this also puts on our nurses and health staff and administration. Basically, since school started, they're working 7 days a week into late hours of the evening. In a lot of cases, they're not allowed to be a school nurse. They're dialing numbers to talk to parents. So this position that you have before you for the health team communicator will report to the director of Health Services and the superintendent. It would be on 182 contractual days. The wages, Dr. Briggs, do we have a pay scale for them yet? Or is it just the approval of the position and then the pay scale to be determined?
It's the approval of the position for now.
Okay.
Their pay will be determined based on their qualifications. We would prefer bilingual, but not required.
Okay.
It's a different pay scale.
Any questions before, not necessarily discussion, that'll happen after the vote, but any questions on the health team communicator position? With that, do we have a motion to bring voting to the floor and discussion? Mr. Brown makes the motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Basham seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, all of those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Last item on the agenda is the field trip. Mr. Horton's request. That is dated on March 20th. I'm sorry. For the dates of March 20th through 29th of 2023. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, that's a lot of planning.
It takes a lot of planning when you go out to a customer.
That's true. Any questions on the field trip request? We have a motion to bring it to the floor. Mr. Basham makes the motion. Do we have a second? Ms. Overberg seconds. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, all of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any final comments before adjournment?
Yeah, do you not take any public comment?
There was no, the emergency board meeting does not have public comment. There was not a motion brought to the table for public comment.
Well, before you adjourn, can somebody make that motion to talk to the public about all this?
What do you mean to talk to the public?
We're not wearing masks. You better be prepared to start suspending kids.
Our students go to the school.
Do we have a motion for adjournment?
Why did you all?
I motion.
Ms. Overberg makes a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll make that. I'll second.
Teachers is why we're not open.
Ms. Franklin makes seconds the motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Why wasn't notice sent out for this meeting if we weren't allowed to talk?
Meeting adjourned.
Mics are muted.
Nice.
Cameras are off.